Third, in terms of the presidential initiatives, is the recommitment to fighting global hunger and to improving food security around the world. At the G8 last year, many nations joined in a $22 billion commitment to improve our work on agricultural production, strengthening social safety nets, improving nutrition around the world, to better cope with the challenge presented by having still over 1 billion of the world's population that suffers from chronic hunger, a situation which unfortunately probably will only become more challenging given the challenges of the world food crisis over the past several years, and the projections that the demand for food in the next 20 years will rise by 50%. Finally is the President's Global Engagement Initiative, echoing themes that President Obama expressed in his speech last year to Cairo University about the need for the United States to engage more proactively with a lot of communities and countries that perhaps we hadn't listened to enough. I think just a general outreach and urging for the United States to be listening more with respect to what we're doing in terms of global development cooperation. I think I'm struck as I look at things like the new emphasis in our budget and resources for development, the articulation of interest in development, its integration with other key aspects of our foreign policy. It's both a challenging time to be a development professional in light of things like chronic hunger, rising food insecurity, infectious diseases which don't respect borders, natural disasters such as those which ravaged Haiti and Chile recently. But at the same time, it's also a very exciting time to be a development professional. In my 20 years, I don't think I've ever seen as much political support, bipartisan political support, in the United States for development and for the objectives that we're seeking to achieve in development. Global development issues are now really the most pressing issues that political leaders around the world are paying attention to and are concerned with. This has maybe often been the case in the case of developing countries, but now we see it in terms of the G8 leaders, G20 leaders, and will probably be the focus of the G20 summit that South Korea is hosting later this year. Finally, I would just like to comment, I think, on one of the more exciting developments in our world over the last 10 years, and that's been the increased attention to and formation of public-private partnerships. No matter how much our budgets increase for ODA, no matter how large our ODA financing is, it will never be enough to solve the extent of the global development challenges. Just as one example, Prime Minister Gordon Brown estimated that developing countries will require over $1 billion a year to be able to effectively adapt and be resilient to the effects of global climate change. That's not going to come from ODA alone, obviously. As an example of the trends that we're seeing, I think very positive trends, in 2008, the United States was the largest provider of ODA with about $28 billion. But in that same year, net private giving was over 3 times that, at $99 billion. We also see examples of this more recently in terms of Haiti, the enormous outpouring of support for relief in Haiti. U.S. government contributions exceeded, in the first couple of months, $750 million. But private giving to Haiti in that same time period outstripped it on a 3-to-1 basis. The biggest news in Davos at the World Economic Forum was not an announcement from a government, but it was the Gates Foundation's commitment to provide $10 billion for research and development of vaccines.
Sorry, John, was Gordon Brown?
Sorry, $100 billion annually.
100 billion, okay.
100 billion.
네, 끝으로 제가
So over the last 10 years, USAID has put a lot of emphasis in trying to build these public-private partnerships. And I wanted to mention it because at the core of this, a lot of these ideas for partnerships and the development of these partnerships have really sprung from U.S. NGOs. For instance, our long-running partnership with Starbucks now to support the diversification and increase of income for small farmers in Central America came out of work that we had been doing with the Conservation International, a U.S. NGO. The International Youth Foundation, which is working on youth training in sub-Saharan Africa, has entered into several partnerships with Samsung, a South Korean company, to leverage the impact of its work in Africa. Partnerships like those I mentioned are not just directed at simple philanthropy or fundraising, but increasingly we're looking at the intersection between the core development objectives of agencies like USAID and KOICA and US and Korean NGOs with really what are the core business interests of a lot of companies throughout the world. Working with Coca-Cola on clean water, for instance, or Microsoft in terms of improving education and access to technology. I think there's an enormous potential here, and NGOs have been central in this move, and I will continue to be central in terms of generating more of these kinds of very productive public-private partnerships. Finally, I would just like to mention that given the extent of these global development challenges, the United States is in the midst of undertaking a number of reviews at seeing how we can be best positioned to respond to things like climate change, challenges of pandemic diseases, food insecurity. And President Obama last August launched a presidential study directive chaired by our National Economic Council and by our National Security Council, involving our entire government to make recommendations to the President on how we should adjust or better position ourselves toward meeting these global development challenges. In addition to the President's review, Secretary Clinton has launched the first ever quadrennial review of diplomacy and development to look at how the State Department and USAID should be adapting or modifying to best meet the diplomatic and development challenges of the 21st century. And both reviews should be coming out with recommendations shortly. I think I can say with certainty, and I think as would the leaders of each of these reviews say, that whatever the adjustments, revisions, and improvements we make to our foreign assistance and global development operations around the world, that NGOs will continue to be a central part of our efforts. NGOs will be a critical part of developing, building, and carrying out the 4 presidential initiatives and the vast array of other development work that we do around the world. I think with that, I run a bit over, and I don't want to take too much time away from the distinguished panel there. So I look forward to your questions, and I look forward to the discussion. 감사합니다.